Hello, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I really want to talk to you about key performance metrics, and why you should maybe try to focus on the unobservable, or whether you should actually focus on the things that are really truly observable in this world. So I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and this is part of my thesis help series. So I think this is going to be an interesting one because it's going to sort of cross between, the business world, and because the people in business and companies and stuff like that, they deal with key performance indicators, and they try to come up with great key performance indicators. But this is actually a really big thing in science as well, or somebody that's doing a PhD and thinking about doing research in this particular area, right? So whether you should focus on something that has already been measured in the past, whether this actually is a good thing. So what is a key performance indicator? Well, key performance indicator is some sort of metric. It's a number. It's something like that that's written down, some sort of quantitative thing where it describes some sort of performance or some sort of observable outcome of some actions that have happened for whether it's an individual, whether it's a person, whether it's a company, whether it is a group, whether it is maybe it's something going on in physics, right? So gravity, whether it is I don't know, whether it is something that's going on in chemistry, for example. And there's all sorts of areas where you might look at a key performance indicator, which is just essentially a metric of some sort that's measuring the performance of whatever you're looking at, right? So I personally think, and I'm going to probably spend a bunch of videos on this because I think that I just tapped into something that was really interesting, I think it's really important for you to focus on things that are not easily observable for a lot of different reasons. I'm going to go through a few of them here. I continue to sort of add this going forward, because this is a really important thing that most people get wrong, and yet it's probably the most important thing within science, within whatever you're looking, within company performance. Is very, very essential to understand that you should be looking at things that are not observable, that are really difficult to observe. Why is that? Why should you be focusing on things that are not easily observable? Well, first of all, I want to get into, before I get into some reasons why that is the case, I want to get into, who is interested in this more broadly. In terms of companies, a lot of companies will spend a substantial amount of money sort of thinking about key performance indicators, KPIs, right? They're sometimes called like that. And they might be things like financial performance, for example, financial performance, key performance indicators, which are like a return on assets, return on your investment, ROI, things like return on your sales, for example, which is how much money you're actually getting from your sales that you're getting, return on your employees, how much money you're getting from each employee, how much money are they actually producing. There's lots of things like that in the financial sort of side of things that people are interested in, as well as the stock market performance, right? So how much a stock is moving up and down, how much is how much are, I don't know, what's their market capitalization, so how big the company is. These kind of things are measured a lot in terms of financial performance. There's also sort of operational performance in a company, which might be measuring how many widgets a company is making, how much a company is, how good their quality is for the particular widgets that they're producing. Things like that are really kind of in line. And then there's also employee performance, key performance indicators or performance metrics, such as, how happy employees are, how productive the employees are in terms of maybe producing stuff. So if you're thinking of yourself as an employee, as a PhD student, for example, you might be, how much are you actually producing on a day-to-day basis? How many pages are you writing? How many experiments are you doing? How much data are you collecting? Things like that are very much sort of key performance indicators that companies as well as PhD students and scientists worry about all the time. Oh, one with scientists that are really important and sort of relates to quality as well as production. It's how many papers are they producing, or how many citations are they getting on each individual paper that they're actually producing, and they build sort of a corpus of papers that people are sort of citing, right? And how many citations are they getting? You hear that a lot. How many papers? How many A's do you got? How many citations do you got? These kind of things are so, people are so concerned about them, both in business and in science, and there is lots of reasons to suggest that is probably that's a really poor way to actually manage things, and a poor way to sort of look at the world around this. Why is that the case? So the reasons, there's a bunch of different reasons. I'm just going to name through 5 of them that I just quickly came up to the top of my head at this moment. The first one is most observable metrics have been unobservable in the past, right? So stock market performance, right? We didn't have a stock market until 150 years ago. Those were completely unobservable, and they're imaginary, right? Like what the actual price is, that is what other people are willing to pay. We don't really have a good, we don't really have a good sort of sense of exactly what that is, because they're buyers and sellers. You might try to sell your particular stock and all of a sudden it falls because something else is going on and it is worthless, right? Or you're tracking your stock performance over time and you look at it today and then it falls the next day and it can be completely worthless. It's really, this stuff is really just kind of made up to a large extent. Our performance indicators of how much sort of scientific output that we have, for example, like how many citations you're getting. Well, back 200 years ago, we didn't have those key performance metrics, right? Like those were completely unobservable. Nobody would have looked at any of that stuff. This is a really recent phenomenon where we're looking at citations probably the last 30 years, where universities are really pressured for performance to look at citations that they have on their on how many people are actually sort of citing their work. Other things like, I don't know, what, like return on assets, for example, or any sort of financial performance. Well, accounting is a relatively recent phenomenon that, we were doing sort of accounting in the past, but we weren't sort of doing it in the way that we're doing it now in terms of the rigor that we have. If you go back, 150 years ago, they were all unobservable. So we're just kind of doing things in the dark, right? Like, all of that stuff was unobservable, and people started my point is, people were actually trying to observe that once we got sort of a way to observe it. Then all of a sudden we took off with understanding the world around us and how things actually work. So there's a lot of things that are there's an infinite number of things in this world that are unobservable that we can't sort of put our hands on at this moment. But as soon as we put our hands on them, they're going to take off. They're going to be really, really important. So things like, another example is sort of ranking, how we rank in the world, right? There's all of these kind of rankings out of how your business ranks relative to everybody else. Well, somebody is determining those rankings, and those people that are determining the rankings, they determine the weightings of how sort of things will be weighted, or they determine the methodology to determine those rankings. That's all made up. And, that is really, really made up, and people fudge those and game those and all that kind of stuff. Like there's lots of things like that that are really kind of weird and strange. So the second thing is virtually nothing in the world nothing in this world is easily observable to any sort of extent, or anything that really truly matters is really truly observable, right? Like things like, okay, how much is culture in your company? How much is what is culture? What is love, and love with your relationships you have with your family? How much do people actually care for their kids? Can you measure something like that? How much they actually care for their kids? Can you measure how well somebody is improving in school in terms of, knowledge that they're actually observing? We have all of these sort of testing things that are trying to capture that, but it doesn't necessarily capture, like, are people actually truly learning, right? Like, is that there? Is that possible? It's really kind of not easy to do in any sort of way. And there is so much room for improvement, even in education, in terms of measuring these particular outcomes, right? We're just starting to capture performance of in the classroom a little bit better than what we had in the past. I mean, 30 years ago, we would have been measuring very, very inaccurately, but now we're starting to come up with better ways. We have software systems, for example, that measure things a little bit better, but we're still not capturing what's truly going on in the brain. We're still using sort of standard metrics and stuff like that. In standardization, there's so much to understand with the world that are easily unobservable. So what else? The third thing is a lot of the things that are unobservable in this world, that is precisely the things that actually provide a tremendous amount of value. We've known this in our research, in my research, and thinking about strategy with the resource-based view. We've been talking about that since the early 80s. And things that actually provide value for a company or for an individual are things that you can't measure. They're things that are really complicated. You can't sort of understand what's going on in an easy way. So you should be trying to sort of look at the world of trying to, okay, what can we capture in the company? What can we capture in this study, in this world around us, that we can try to capture a little bit better than what we did before? Because as soon as you could do that, you have tremendous amount of value that you're capturing, right? In science, right, we make a tremendous amount of science with converting the unobservable into the observable. Anything around us is a lot of things around us are unobservable, and we used to think like, oh, really crazy ideas because of these unobservable things, and then as soon as we put sort of metrics and we understand, and we sort of get a little bit closer to understanding what the unobservable is, we make tremendous progress. Right, so for example, gravity waves, right? Like, what the heck is a gravity wave? That has the progress in the last few years in physics is tremendously. As soon as we started capturing what a gravity wave is, it's exploded. How does a brain actually work? We couldn't measure, we couldn't see how a brain actually works until we had the fMRI in the early 80s, the late 70s, early 80s. We could not see what that was. We were just guessing at that moment of how the brain was actually working. And as soon as we had that, it had exploded, right? As soon as we can measure something, the science actually exploded. As soon as we have better metrics in terms of operational performance in our company, then we know exactly what to capture, and we can sort of move and go forward tremendously. We couldn't do that. We can't do that until you actually measure those things that are unobservable and capture those things that are unobservable. And the last things that we know is that the things that are really observable and easy to observe, those are really not, there's not a lot of value there, right? Because those are measuring things that have happened in the past. Those are lagging indicators of what have happened in the past. They're not sort of foreshadowing where the world is going to go. And that, to understand where the world is going to go and understand your company, understand your performance as a PhD, whatever it is you're looking at, you have to try to look at those things that are unobservable. You have to convert that unobservable world around you, whatever it is you're looking at, whether you're looking at love, whether you're looking at some crazy thing in physics, whether you're looking at something that's happening in some far galaxy. You have to go to those spaces that are unobservable and difficult to measure and convert those, try to understand them, and try to turn it into something that is observable. Now, there we have a process in science that's called operationalization, but in measurement and in metrics, but in the general world, in the general rule, that's what you should be focusing on, is looking for the things that are unobservable and trying to capture those more than the things that are observable. That's the easy stuff, is to focus on the key performance metrics that are observable. You want to start to look at how your company, look at how you perform as a PhD, whatever it is you're trying to look at. You have to go deeper and look at the things that are more substantial than things that, how many publications somebody has, right? How many citations they have, what is their financial performance. Financial performance is a complete lagging indicator. That is something that happens after the fact that somebody has produced a tremendous amount of value for somebody else, and then they purchase that particular thing, and then that drives up your financial performance, right? You have to look at where you're going. You have to go to those unobservable stuff and try to capture that. That is the important thing, and that's how you're going to drive a tremendous amount of value. So don't ever sort of hinge on if somebody says, well, we can't measure that. That is not easily measured. What is that? That is something that's a silly idea because we're never going to be able to measure that. Don't listen to that. Go to where it's difficult to measure those particular things. That's where the value is. And that's where we have tremendous amount of progress and understanding the world around us. I mean, there's so many things like that. Cancer, for example, we didn't have a clue what cancer was. Maybe it was washing your hands, 150, 200 years ago, surgeons were actually going from person to person without washing their hands. Anesthesia, right? We didn't think I think it was even like 30, 40 years ago, we didn't think like the trade-off of giving like little young kids, babies, anesthesia. We didn't think that was a necessary thing, but we know that is a truly necessary thing when you're getting a surgical procedure, right? Like, these are things we can't measure, we can't get at, and it's not sort of clear, but those are the things that matter, and that's where progress is going to make, and you have to convert that stuff into the unobservable stuff, into a real true metric that it resonates with you as a person, with you as a company. All right, so if you like this video, make sure that you give me a thumbs up. I do appreciate it, and do subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, take care. Bye.